I was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis household, yet the man I loved handed me over to his younger uncle to be a concubine. In my past life, I would rather have died than submit, so he threw me onto a pleasure boat for others to defile. It was Shen Qingyan who saved me from the abyss. My half-sister, who had secretly loved him for years, grew jealous of how well he treated me and hired mountain bandits to toss me off a cliff. I died with no remains left to bury, while she claimed I had fallen by accident during a secret meeting with a lover. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day Shen he was about to send me away. I saw the helplessness in his eyes, yet he still stole secret glances at me. I let out a cold laugh, cutting off all his pretentious talk of righteousness and helpless sorrow. I am the legitimate daughter of the Marquis household. If I am to marry, it will be properly, as your aunt by law. Shen Qingyan must take me as his wife.
1.
I never thought I would see Shinhe again. Perhaps the heavens had not abandoned me, granting me another chance to personally destroy these deceitful cowards. He sent a letter, asking me to meet him at the Wangchun tea house tomorrow. I went as promised. When he saw me, the joy in his eyes seemed genuine. But I knew better. He only wanted to hand me over to his younger uncle, Shen Qingyan. Thinking of that man, as noble and bright as sunlight after a rain, my heart ached as if pricked by 1,000 needles. While I was momentarily distracted, he suddenly seized my hand. He pressed it against his chest, his expression full of pleading. "Wanner, I know you love me, but this time, giving you to Shen Qingyan is truly out of desperation. If you love me, you must help me. In my past life, it was He's honeyed words that bewitched me and nearly made me marry his uncle. But then, my half-sister had come to my room, whispering all sorts of slander about Shen Qingyan, planting fear in my heart and making me refuse him to the death. Finally, he revealed his true nature and threw me onto a pleasure boat, forcing me to endure endless humiliation. I, a legitimate daughter of the Marquis household, ended up shattered beyond recognition. He kept rambling, listing his supposed love for me and countless hardships, urging me to think about his future prospects. He said, "Wanner, I saved your life, but I've never asked anything of you before. That Shen Qingyan has bullied me too much. I have no choice but to beg you for help." He might have the face of a gentleman, but he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Even my so-called good sister was completely wrapped around his finger. Just yesterday, to prepare for meeting He, I had dyed my nails with henna flowers, leaving them a delicate pink. I let my fingers trace lightly along the collar of He's robes. He swallowed hard, subconsciously leaning closer to me. I suddenly gave him a hard shove, making him stumble backward. "He, if your brain is full of filth, you should find somewhere else to dump it instead of polluting the air in this room. A legitimate daughter like me, become his concubine? You must be dreaming." Enraged and humiliated, he could no longer maintain his usual gentle facade, his face twisting into a snarl as he tried to move closer. I coldly glanced at him and threw the silver hairpin he had once given me into his arms. If Shen Qingyan is to marry me, it will be through a proper match, with a grand procession of 8 bridal sedan chairs. And you? You think you can force me to be his concubine? Don't worry, so long as he takes me as his wife. Whatever else you need, I will handle it for you. I toyed with the teacup in my hand, then suddenly hurled it to the ground. The crash startled he so badly he flinched. "After all, I still owe you for saving my life. Wouldn't you say so, young Master Shen?"
2.
When I returned to the Marquis estate, I saw my detestable half-sister standing by the gate, peeking around anxiously. The moment she saw me, she plastered on a fake smile, doused in powder and perfume, and rushed toward me. "Sister, where have you been? Were you meeting young Master Shen?" In my past life, it was behind that innocent facade that she schemed and pushed me to my doom. I subtly avoided her grasp. "If you're that curious, why don't you go ask your precious young Master Shen yourself?" Li Nianfu stomped her feet in frustration, afraid I might tear apart her carefully maintained act. After sending away that phony face, I finally let out a breath of relief. Xiao Tao handed me a cup of tea, meant to calm the nerves and help sleep. I smiled faintly as I stared at her. This tea does smell quite sweet. Xiao Tao hesitated, stammering, but I waved her off and told her to leave. Once the room fell silent, I pushed open the window. I let the tea slowly seep into the soil below. By midnight, chaos had broken out across the Marquis estate. I could hear the frantic shouts of people. Through the window, shadows swarmed the courtyard. I gripped a dagger, inching my way carefully into a corner. A dark figure vaulted in through the window. The man was clad in black, tall and straight, but blood stained his chest. He was clearly wounded. I crept closer, with the dagger poised. Suddenly, he turned around and pulled off his mask. "Don't be afraid. It's me." 3. Beneath the mask was Shun Qingyan's cold, sharp-featured face, sword-like brows, and starry eyes. At this moment, his complexion was pale, adding a fragile beauty to his usual severity. I suppressed the stirring in my heart and didn't step forward. Instead, I pretended to be frightened. "How dare you? Shun Qingyan, you broke into the Marquis estate and even into my private chambers. What exactly are you after?" Shun Qingyan looked exhausted, but a faint smirk played on his lips as he feigned pitifulness. "Isn't it because of your dear lover? He tried to assassinate me. Naturally, I came here to seek my revenge." As soon as the words left his mouth, there was a loud knock at the door. Shun Qingyan pulled me into his arms and dragged me onto the bed, the curtains falling around us. He rested his head suggestively against my shoulder, his hot breath brushing against my ear. "Miss Li's reputation now lies in your own hands," he whispered. I rolled my eyes in the darkness. If not for the sight of his flushed ears, I might have truly been frightened by him. In my past life, I really must have been blind, falling for tricks like these and treating him as an enemy afterward. It wasn't until he rescued me that I finally looked him in the eye for the first time. Miss, are you in there?" Xiao Tao's voice sounded from outside, growing louder as she pounded at the door, threatening to break it down at any moment. Moments later, I heard my half-sister's sweet, concerned voice. Sister, are you all right?" I yanked the door open. Li Nianfu stumbled forward and almost fell into my arms. I stepped back, letting her drop awkwardly to the floor. Her face flushed deep red with embarrassment. Anger burned in her eyes. "I heard there was a man in your room, so I brought people to protect you." When I said nothing, she covered her mouth with her embroidered handkerchief and feigned shock. "Sister, could it be that what they said is true?" "Fool," I sneered. I picked up the teapot and poured myself a cup of tea. Outside the room, the servants she brought had their heads bowed, but their eyes darted around restlessly. Seeing me so calm, Li Nianfu bit her lip and pretended to wander casually through my room, her hands searching everywhere without stopping. She found nothing and, unwilling to give up, flitted about like a headless fly, trying to provoke me. "Sister, I'm only worried for your safety. If an assassin were really hiding here, wouldn't that put you in grave danger? How could I, your little sister, possibly live with myself then?" I lowered my gaze, waved her off, and met her eyes with a half-smile. "Then you must search carefully, dear sister." Li Nianfu, fierce only in appearance but weak inside, rummaged around for a while without finding anything. Finally, her face darkened, and she tried to take her leave. I stopped her cold. "Hold it. You barged in here so hurriedly. After searching high and low, what exactly have you found?" Her face turned ashen. "Nothing." I looked down on her from above, grabbing her chin between my fingers. "Then for barging into your elder sister's room without permission, shouldn't you be punished?" 4. Li Nianfu panicked instantly. She rushed to my side, pretending to act all sweet and pitiful. The sight of her fake pleas almost made me sick. If today's events really led to any trouble, it would have nothing to do with protecting me. She simply wanted to destroy my reputation. What she didn't seem to realize was that if I fell, she, as my half-sister, would be dragged down with me. How would she expect the younger sisters, not yet of marrying age, to hold their heads high after that. She was still as stupid as ever. I shook off her hand, clutching my sleeve, and ordered the old maidservants to drag her to the ancestral hall. She would kneel there for 3 days and 3 nights as punishment and warning. The ancestral hall was cold and damp. As she knelt on the hard ground, she looked up at me with resentment in her eyes. I had the servants lock the door. No matter how she cried and begged, it would not be opened. Ironically, this punishment was something Li Nianfu herself had invented. She used it often to torment the younger half-sisters over the years. Kneeling there for 3 days wouldn't kill her. The cruel part was that she had ordered the servants not to give any water or food, only to leave a single candle burning dimly. What was more torturous than thirst was the unbearable passage of time. Now it was her turn to taste her own medicine. The pent-up anger from my rebirth finally eased a little. In this life, no matter what, I would make Li Nianfu and Shun He pay. I figured Shen Qingyan must have left by now. As I toyed with the jade pendant in my hand, a sudden voice from behind startled me. "Why are you still here?" Shen Qingyan clutched his chest, his face pale. Though the words on his lips were harsh, the worry in his eyes was unmistakable. With such a fine drama playing out at the Marquis estate, how could I not stay and enjoy the show? I ignored him. Shen Qingyan grew impatient and poked my shoulder from behind. Wherever I turned, he followed. Finally, when I turned and glared at him, he smiled faintly. "Hey, seeing you angry really makes my day." I tossed a bottle of wound medicine into his arms. "Don't you dare die in my room." He stood there frozen, looking slightly stunned. Shen Qingyan, for all his handsome looks, always carried a chilling coldness in his smiling, fox-like eyes that could make people instinctively afraid. Plus, Li Nianfu had spent years whispering about Shen Qingyan's brutality and bloodshed in my ear, while Shen, he always portrayed himself as the poor victim. All of that had filled me with an unfounded fear of him. But now, looking at him closely, I realized that in front of me, he always acted a little like a paper tiger, fierce on the outside, but soft inside. It was hard to imagine that someone so decisive and ruthless in the outside world could turn around and silently sacrifice everything for me. If he hadn't rescued me back then and laid all his love bare, how would I ever have known he had feelings for me? I teased him on purpose. "I heard that young Master Shen has never married. What are you waiting for?" Shen Qingyan curved his lips into a smile, as if he had seen right through me. "I'm waiting for someone without a conscience." 5. News that Li Nianfu had been locked up in the ancestral hall spread like wildfire the very next day. Her delicate mother, helpless and flustered, came to plead with me, bringing along plenty of gifts to curry favor. Though she was aging, she still carried the soft, graceful demeanor typical of women from Jiangnan. No wonder my father had fallen so deeply into her gentle trap. She had no idea about all the things Li Nianfu had done, but that didn't stop her from spoiling her daughter endlessly. It was precisely because of her spineless indulgence that Li Nianfu had been emboldened to cause such disasters. The hatred for my previous life roared inside me. I wanted nothing more than to drink their blood and devour their flesh. But death would be too easy for Li Nianfu. This time, I would make sure she walked into hell one step at a time with her own feet. Everything the concubine said hinted at asking me to let Li Nianfu go. I didn't want to hear it. With a loud thud, I set down my teacup. "Auntie, spoiling my sister too much will only break the rules of the household. If she doesn't suffer a little hardship, how will she ever grow up? If she marries into another family and acts so recklessly, what would happen to the reputation of the daughters from our house?" Her flustered appearance annoyed me even more, and with a few dismissive words, I sent her away. After selling Xiao Tao that day, I replaced everyone around me with people I could trust. Conversations became far less restrained. "Has everything been prepared for today's spring banquet? Make sure my dear half-sister doesn't hatch any inappropriate schemes." Rui leaned closer, and we shared a knowing smile. "Rest assured, miss," she said, "everything will go exactly as you wish." The spring banquet was a gathering where noble daughters from prestigious families came together to chat and socialize. It was also an opportunity for the matriarchs of each house to observe the girls. If they found anyone pleasing, marriage proposals could follow. After being released from punishment, my half-sister started acting sweet and obedient again, clearly plotting to steal the spotlight at the banquet. Knowing I liked jade, she somehow managed to find a piece of high-quality rough jade and presented it to me as a gift. I smiled as I looked at Li Nianfu, who bowed low and acted meek. Why, dear sister, what are you saying? As long as she is of marriageable age, whether legitimate or not, every girl is allowed to attend the spring banquet. After learning about her punishment in the ancestral hall, father kept a much closer watch over Li Nianfu. If I hadn't spoken up for her, she would have had no chance of attending. Sister, please, I'm begging you. All the other young ladies know we're always together. If I don't go, they'll surely start to suspect you. In my past life, Li Nianfu had acted so perfectly that she fooled not just me, but even the daughters of the great noble houses, leading us all by the nose. At the spring banquet, she spread rumors about me and Shun He, causing my reputation to plummet. She then set traps that made father lose all faith in me. Step by step, she pushed me into an irredeemable abyss. I suddenly felt the air grow thin. I stood up and sent her away coldly. Remember to tread carefully, sister. Li Nianfu's every word was a veiled threat. The great families valued the fair treatment of legitimate and illegitimate children. Father had not taken a second wife, only a few concubines. Since I had taken over household management before even coming of age, if word got out that I mistreated my half-sister, my own marriage prospects would be destroyed. Those court officials who opposed father would also seize the opportunity to use this against him. In my past life, that was exactly what they did. 6. At the spring banquet, Li Nianfu fluttered around like a brightly colored butterfly, lingering among the daughters of the most powerful families. If you looked closely, you'd notice every girl she clung to had a background of power and influence. When Fong Jingjing arrived, I was hiding lazily in a quiet corner. She rushed over, full of energy, and pinched my cheek. You little lady, hiding out here all by yourself? A wave of emotions surged inside me. It was truly good to see her again. Even if 1,000 others didn't believe me, Fong Jingjing had rushed back to the capital for my sake. I grabbed her hand and pulled her into a tight hug. What's wrong? Did someone bully you? No, I just missed you too much. Outside, the archery games and pitch-pot contests were lively and noisy. As we sat drinking tea with the others, Li Nianfu sat beside me, gracefully pouring tea and serving dishes, acting every bit the affectionate sister. If only she hadn't furtively sprinkled an unknown powder into my teacup, she might have pulled off the act perfectly. I pretended to sip the tea, catching the flash of smugness in her eyes. Fong Jingjing cast her a disdainful glare. Your little half-sister is giving me the creeps today, she muttered. I whispered something into Fong Jingjing's ear, then got up to take a walk. The gardens were lovely, blooming with flowers, but an annoying maid deliberately bumped into me. She apologized profusely, so I didn't scold her harshly. I'm so sorry, miss. Please let me help you fix your dress. Her intentions were clear, sending my maid away and leaving me alone in a side room. Inside, an overly sweet fragrance filled the air. Li Nianfu, seeing that I had left, was gleeful. Moments later, she cried out dramatically that I had disappeared. Among the teasing laughter of the other noble girls, she bit her lip and casually remarked that I had always been close with Shun He. She even implied that I had been punished and confined in the ancestral hall recently because of it. They were all too eager for gossip, pretending it was just playful chatter, when in truth they were itching to see me humiliated. Both Shun He and Shin Qingyan were present at today's banquet. Li Nianfu wanted to win Shin Qingyan's favor, so she planned to utterly ruin my reputation first. In the garden, the maid who had spilled water on my dress stumbled into Li Nianfu. Under questioning, she stammered and pointed toward the side room, her expression full of unspeakable shame. Li Nianfu covered her mouth, pretending she was about to cry. Could it be that, sister? Under the varied gazes of the crowd, she charged into the room, loudly calling my name. The curtain stirred slightly. Li Nianfu, both excited and triumphant, yanked it aside. But inside, the room was empty. From behind the screen, Shen Qingyan casually stepped forward. Seeing him, Li Nianfu's face changed dramatically. She mumbled in disbelief. The noble girls who followed behind her, seeing Shen Qingyan, looked like wolves spotting prey. Shen Qingyan curled his lips into a slight smile, though there was no warmth in his eyes. "Miss Li," he drawled, rushing in here so boldly. "Are you volunteering yourself for my bed?" He glanced behind him mockingly. "And you brought so many witnesses too? Truly, Miss Li, such splendid manners." Li Nianfu's face twisted in rage. She forced herself to act innocent, eyes reddening as if she had been deeply insulted. "Young Master Shen, what are you saying?" "I was only worried about my sister's safety." Refusing to back down, she pressed on. "Sister and Shen he have long been involved secretly. I only rushed here to stop her from making a terrible mistake. They must be hiding somewhere in this room, deceiving you all." Li Nianfu's earnest performance made some of the noble girls begin to doubt. Those close to her whispered among themselves. It almost cemented the rumor that I had been secretly meeting Shan He. She frantically searched the room, her eyes burning with hatred and unwillingness. "This can't be." Shen Qingyan, losing patience, kicked a stool aside, making everyone's hearts jump. "Enough. End this farce already." I strolled in leisurely, arm in arm with Fong Jingjing, stepping through the crowd. My, what a lively scene. What exciting drama have I missed? Li Nianfu turned deathly pale, pointing at me and stammering. "How are you here?" 7. "If I'm not here, where else would I be, my dear sister?" Li Nianfu, as if she had lost her mind, lunged at me. She shook her head wildly, pointing at me and raving. "You should be with Shen He." I feigned surprise. "Sister, what nonsense are you spouting? Shen He? Who might that be?" I caught Shen Qingyan's gaze. The amusement dancing in his eyes almost made me lose my composure. Fong Jingjing let out a cold snort. "What a vicious little half-sister. To falsely accuse your own legitimate elder sister in broad daylight. Qingwan and I were merely strolling in the garden. Yet in your mouth, it turns into some filthy affair. How utterly ridiculous." If Li Nianfu had been in her right mind, she would never have let herself fall into such humiliation. But sadly, the incense burning in the room had already taken heavy effect. Laughing maniacally, she lunged at me and clutched my sleeve. Her crazed laughter echoed through the room. "Li Qingwan, don't get cocky. The position of the legitimate daughter will be mine sooner or later. I'll replace you and marry Shen Qingyan. One day, I'll trample you underfoot, making you wish for death, but unable to die. Go to hell." Li Nianfu screamed as she tried to strangle me. Shen Qingyan moved swiftly, kicking her to the ground with a single strike. The second young lady of the Marquis estate seems to be suffering from a bout of hysteria. She should be taken back and properly treated. I collapsed weakly into Fong Jingjing's arms, covering my face as I pretended to weep. I've truly embarrassed myself before all my dear sisters. My younger sister's sudden madness, it's all due to my poor care as her elder sister. I'll take her home immediately. Several noble daughters hurried over to comfort me. "Miss Li, you mustn't be sad. Your half-sister must have harbored jealousy for a long time and lost her mind today. We've all seen your character clearly with our own eyes. Rest assured, we won't let such slander tarnish your name. In my past life, things had been very different. Li Nianfu had been ruthless enough to fill the incense with a full dose of mind-altering poison, intending to make me lose consciousness. If I had known in advance and switched it for a scent that stirred hidden desires instead, today it would have been me, utterly ruined. No matter how I had explained myself back then, the rumors still spread like wildfire, step by step driving me toward an irreversible tragedy. Once Fong Jingjing helped me into the carriage, we both finally let out a breath of relief. She clutched my hand tightly, her eyes full of worry. "Are you all right? Do you need me to do anything?" I smiled gently to reassure her, telling her not to worry about me. Li Nianfu had simply fallen into her own trap. If she hadn't lingered in that room for so long, how would she have succumbed to the effects of the Maluoxiang incense, awakening the darkest corners of her own heart? One misstep, and now, how would she possibly explain herself to Shen He?
8.
When father learned of what had happened, he was furious. He summoned all the women of the household to witness the punishment. Grabbing the family whip, he lashed it down on Li Nianfu over and over. She screamed and cried out for justice, accusing me of framing her. But father, seeing she showed no remorse, only struck harder with each blow. A light rain began to fall from the misty sky. Li Nianfu's mother had already fainted once from crying. No one dared to plead for her. The rain mixed with the blood seeping from her wounds, streaming downwards. The pain robbed her of her voice, but the hatred in her eyes burned as fiercely as ever. Through the foggy rain, I clearly saw the shape of her mouth mouthing silent words. Li Qingwan, I'll make sure you die a miserable death. Thus ended the matter of the spring banquet. All the good reputation Li Nianfu had painstakingly built was destroyed. Now, when people spoke of her, they only mentioned her as the one who went mad. After the whipping, father confined her to the ancestral hall again, this time for half a month. Li Nianfu practically shed a layer of skin. When she finally emerged, her face was as pale as a ghost crawling out of hell. She acted even more submissively than before, yet the venom in her eyes could not be hidden. After I rejected Shen He that day, I had ordered the servants to forbid him from entering the estate. Unable to reach Li Nianfu, Shen He eventually managed, after much effort, to pass a letter to me through one of my least noticeable half-sisters. I smiled faintly as I stared at the timid half-sister. You've got some nerve. Father just said no private dealings with outside men, and here you are delivering a letter right after. How much silver did Shen He give you? The daughters of the Marquis household must not be so shallow.
She didn't panic.
She knelt firmly on the ground and spoke clearly. If this letter had fallen into someone else's hands, gossip would have been inevitable. But since it came to me, it ends here. What you choose to do with the letter is your decision, eldest sister. I swear, no second person will ever hear of it. I only beg you, please, help me secure a good future. Looking at her kneeling figure, my vision blurred for a moment. In my past life, after I was kidnapped by Shen He, father, wanting to avoid scandal, had covered up the incident. Li Nianfu had taken my place in managing the household affairs. All the beautiful half-sisters were quickly married off to frivolous wastrels, suffering endless misery. And she, this quiet half-sister, suffered the worst fate of all. After marrying, her husband died early. Her mother-in-law abused her mercilessly, and her sister-in-law beat her at every opportunity. The family, impoverished, even considered selling her off. Unable to endure the humiliation, she hanged herself. I felt a pang of pity. I lifted her up and said gently, Father has already chosen a good husband for you. A learned scholar with a respectable family background. You will marry as his primary wife and live well. If it weren't for Li Nianfu, all of them would have had the futures they deserved. Now, let the consequences of her sins fall back upon herself. I accepted Shen He's invitation and then handed the letter over to Shen Qingyan. That night, when he appeared in my room, I wasn't surprised. But I pretended to be. Oh my, what brings Lord Shen here tonight? Shen Qingyan, however, wasn't acting playful today. He kept his eyes lowered, as if carrying 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Under the moonlight, his handsome face was shrouded in a faint, melancholic beauty. You sent Shen He's letter to me. What exactly are you trying to say? At the mention of Shen He, contempt filled his eyes. He cautiously moved closer. I didn't step back, so he took another small step forward, but even so, he kept a respectful distance. Far more decent than Shen He ever was. Shen He, because he had once saved me, always acted frivolously. When I refused him, he didn't hesitate to sell me off to the pleasure boats. In my past life, I had been completely blinded by his false purity, convinced that Shin Qingyan was a ruthless killer and foolishly gave all my loyalty to Shin He. Little did I know, it was Shin Qingyan who saved me, who shielded me with care. Li Nianfu, out of jealousy, had me abducted and thrown off a cliff. When I fell, it was Shin Qingyan who rushed toward me without hesitation, leaping after me, and ultimately losing his life, body shattered and torn. My heart ached sharply. But fortunately, in this life, Shin Qingyan was still alive, standing right in front of me. The seeds of affection, planted long ago, had already begun to sprout. I turned away, not wanting him to see the turmoil in my eyes. Since your young master sent me an invitation, of course I had to deliver it to his elder. Shin Qingyan's tone was laced with jealousy and sharpness. If that's all you intended, you needn't have troubled yourself. Since when could I, Shin Qingyan, control your actions? Back then, when I had asked him for Maluoxiang incense, he hadn't even questioned me. Today, though unwilling, he still respected my wishes and left the choice to me. My heart burned inexplicably. If someone forbade me from going, would that be enough to stop me? Shin Qingyan fell silent for a moment. Then, to my astonishment, he squinted his eyes and pinned me against the wall. The sudden closeness made my cheeks flush red. Li Qingwan, he said softly, I've noticed you're not afraid of me anymore. Don't think you can do as you please just because I like you. If you truly have feelings for Shin He, I'll just tie him up and drag him to your house to propose marriage. No need to keep testing me. I couldn't help but laugh. At last, I understood the key to all this. Shin He's so-called life-saving grace had fooled my father, but not Shin Qingyan. I had hinted several times to father to support Shin He's promotion, and how could Shin Qingyan not notice? In his eyes, I must have seemed hopelessly infatuated. I placed my hand lightly against his chest, staring into Shin Qingyan's dark eyes. I don't like Shin He. Will you believe me? It was as if he had been scalded. He instantly let go of my hand. If I hadn't been watching closely, I would have missed how red his ears turned. What nonsense are you spouting? Whether or not you like Shin He, what does that have to do with me? Oh, is that so? I smiled indifferently. Then when suitors come breaking down our door, I'll just pick whoever I like best. Shin Qingyan gritted his teeth in frustration. He grabbed my waist and refused to let go. Remember what you said today. If you dare go back on your word, I leaned closer to him with a teasing smile. You'll what? I'll kidnap you and lock you away.
9.
Shin Qingyan couldn't bear to really lock me away. Though he was clearly reluctant, he still thoughtfully urged me to bring more people along to ensure my safety. Shin He, meanwhile, had completely changed from the gloominess of the past few days. His brows and eyes were filled with fake smiles as he sighed and apologized to me, blaming everything on Li Nianfu. He spoke at length, saying he had been momentarily bewitched, that it was Li Nianfu who had fanned the flames by his side, leading him to nearly commit a terrible mistake by thinking of sending me to be Shin Qingyan's concubine. As he spoke, he reached out, trying to grab my hand.
I dodged.
The moment I avoided him, a flash of impatience crossed his face, though he quickly masked it with a show of sincerity. I coldly cut him off. Young Master Shin, how did you come to know my half-sister? Shin He stammered, unable to come up with an answer. No one knew about their secret dealings. In trying to shift all the blame onto Li Nianfu, Shin He had accidentally exposed himself. I hurled my teacup at his face. It struck him hard, making him gasp in pain, his eyes wide with rage. Don't go too far, he shouted. No longer bothering to pretend, he leapt up, raising his hand to hit me. I quickly stood and rushed toward the door, but when I tried to push it open, I found it was locked tight. No matter how hard I pushed, it wouldn't budge. He approached with a twisted grin, pulling a small bottle of unknown powder from his sleeve and flinging it at me. The pungent powder made me choke and cry uncontrollably. I stumbled back, barely avoiding his grasp. Shin He circled me like a cat toying with a trapped mouse, his eyes full of predatory glee. Stop struggling. You'd better just give in. The door's locked. Your maids have all been taken away. Who's going to save you now? Be good, And after this, I'll ask your father for your hand. You'll be my concubine, isn't that wonderful? If only you had obediently become Shen Qingyan's concubine and helped me pass along information, you wouldn't be in this situation now. He lunged at me. I shut my eyes in terror, his triumphant laughter ringing in my ears. But in the next second, there was a loud thud. Shen, he collapsed weakly at my feet. I adjusted my dirted skirt and leaned against Shen Qingyan's arm to steady myself. What took you so long? My new dress is all dirty now. Shen Qingyan snorted coldly. Though his words were full of disdain, he still knelt down and carefully brushed the dust from my skirt. You went out dressed up nicely. All for the sake of meeting him, wasn't it? His sour tone was so unbearably cute that I couldn't help but smile. I poked his flushed earlobe. This dress was meant for you to see. Does it look good? Before Shen Qingyan could answer, I swiftly changed the subject. Who did Li Nianfu send? Such obedient little helpers she has. When I saw the two people tied up at the door, I couldn't help but laugh. No wonder they listened so well. It turns out she came in person. I had thought Li Nianfu would behave for a while. Clearly, the punishment hadn't been enough.
10.
I had the two of them thrown into the same room and sent word to my father. When he arrived, he was so furious he was practically spitting fire. Without another word, he gave them both a harsh beating. No matter how much Li Nianfu cried and insisted that nothing had happened between her and Shen He, father refused to believe her. He hastily prepared a dowry and threw her into Shen He's house as a concubine. Because he also found Shen He to be reckless and undisciplined, father demoted his official rank. Thus, Shen He's dreams of climbing the political ladder were ruined. All thanks to Li Nianfu. The two of them became a pair of resentful enemies, spending their days fighting and cursing at each other. Shen He's mother wasn't easy to deal with either. She tormented Li Nianfu both openly and in secret. Frustrated with his political failures, Shen He would come home and vent his rage on her. Still unwilling to give up his ambitions, Shen He tried to marry a legitimate daughter from a noble family, hoping to use his wife's connections to rise again. He set his sights on a young lady from the Wang family, but by then, his disgrace with Li Nianfu was already well known. No proper noble family would allow their daughter to marry a man like him. Shen He spent his days drunkenly haunting taverns, squandering what little dignity he had left, until he even lost his official position. He didn't dare cause trouble at the Marquis estate, but he harbored a deep hatred toward Shen Qingyan, who had steadily risen to imperial favor. In his madness, he foolishly grabbed the hand of the Wang family's young lady in public. The girl, humiliated and furious, complained to her brother. The Wang family's young master beat Shen He so badly he broke his arm, then dragged him before the emperor, demanding severe punishment. The emperor threw Shen He into prison, telling the Wang family they could deal with him however they wished. He was left to rot for 3 months. Months later, while out shopping, I ran into Shen He by chance. I almost didn't recognize him. He was crawling on the ground, his clothes filthy and torn, rotting vegetable leaves stuck in his hair, his body covered in blood. Li Nianfu, heavily pregnant, was crying and trying to drag him home. The two of them nearly started brawling right there in the street. Someone pulled me into a carriage and drew the curtain shut. Don't look at him. Look at me. It was Shen Qingyan, acting spoiled and childish in front of me once again. Something that only made me love him more. He had already proposed marriage to my father. It wouldn't be long before I became Shen Qingyan's bride. As I touched his face, it felt almost like a dream from another lifetime. Silently, I swore to myself, in this life, I would cherish him well. I had always wondered why Shen He hated Shen Qingyan so much. In my past life, Shen He had wanted to plant me by Shen Qingyan's side as a pawn to destroy him. He had wanted Shen Qingyan dead. It was only now, after a long silence from Shen Qingyan, that he told me the hidden truth of the Shen family. It turned out, Shen He's mother had once loved Shen Qingyan's father. But Shen Qingyan's father had loved only one woman in his entire life. So, Shen He's mother took a different path. She seduced Shen He's father, all just to stay close to the man she truly loved. When Shun He was born, his father learned the truth. He despised the boy utterly, growing up without a father's affection, constantly compared to Shin Qingyan by his mother. Shun He's heart had long been twisted beyond repair. Later, Shun He's father died in battle, and in the same year, Shun Qingyan's mother succumbed to illness. Both families were left shattered. During the mourning period, Shun He's mother even tried to climb into Shin Qingyan's father's bed. 10-year-old Shin He witnessed it all, and from that moment, he developed an unshakable hatred for Shin Qingyan. Shin Qingyan's father took his son and left the family estate, carving out a future for himself at court. Shun He's mother could not accept that Shin Qingyan's life was better than her own son's. She forced Shin He to study literature and martial arts, but he was talentless, neither scholarly nor strong. When he was young, due to her negligence, he had fallen into icy water, crippling his body permanently. He even lost his ability to be a real man. His mind grew more twisted with each passing day. Any noble family that discovered such a secret would never dare to expose it. So Shun He desperately tried to marry into a powerful family to hide it. He wanted a wife to polish his image. But in the end, he and Li Nianfu destroyed themselves. And the child Li Nianfu is carrying? I asked. It's not Shun He's, Shin Qingyan said coolly. Shin He tried to sell her to some rich lords, hoping to use them to claw his way back into court. As for the child, even Li Nianfu probably doesn't know who the father is. A wave of nausea rolled through me. It made me want to tear Shun He apart with my bare hands. What a pitiful sight. Li Nianfu, who had once been clever enough to scheme against me, now powerless against a man as disgusting as Shin He. Two despicable people, perfectly matched. 11. The 25th of May was a perfect day for marriage. Shin Qingyan arrived to marry me with great fanfare. I sat in front of the mirror, carefully adorning myself, my eyes filled with bright, joyful smiles. Chuntao had gone to fetch something, but she hadn't returned even after a long while. I sent someone to check. Left alone in the room, an inexplicable sense of unease crept over me. I caught a strong scent of smoke. Lifting the hem of my dress, I rushed toward the door. But before I could get far, I collapsed limply onto the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Shen He limping toward me with a sinister grin. Li Nianfu stood nearby, laughing wildly, dried blood crusting the corner of her mouth, half her face swollen grotesquely. I struggled to sit up and coldly rebuked them. Shun He, Li Nianfu, have you no regard for your lives? How dare you kidnap me? Li Nianfu crouched at my feet, her overwhelming hatred burning in her gaze as she clutched my throat viciously. Li Qingwan, don't worry. I won't let you die so easily. I took several deep breaths to steady myself. Surely, the Marquis estate would quickly discover my disappearance. As long as I could hold on until Shin Qingyan arrived, everything could be salvaged. But I couldn't just sit here and wait to die. Li Nianfu's belly was flat now, but her child had not yet reached full term. Every time she looked at Shun He's back, hatred flickered in her eyes. Shun He ordered her not to speak to me, snapping harshly. Surprisingly, she did not argue back, not like the Li Nianfu I once knew. I fixed my gaze on her belly and said, "Sister, if you kill me now, are you not worried about bringing misfortune to the soul of your unborn child?" The moment I said this, both of their faces changed color. Shun He sneered. That bastard child was never going to be born anyway. His careless words enraged Li Nianfu. In a fit of madness, she seized a knife and stabbed it into Shun He's chest. "It's all because of you. If not for you, I would still be the second young lady of the Marquis estate. You ruined my entire life." Sobbing and screaming, she stabbed him again and again. I reached out to check, but Shun He was already thoroughly dead. A selfish man like Shen, he would never have tolerated Li Nianfu giving birth to another man's child. He had only kept the child alive to use as leverage. Once he got what he wanted, he had someone dispose of it. Li Nianfu was both pitiful and hateful. The child had come into this world in pain and left it in even greater agony. Unable to accept the child's death or her own fate, Li Nianfu had exploded in violence. Covered in blood, she staggered toward me, knife raised high, like a demon straight out of hell. Li Qingwan, go to hell. If it weren't for you, would I have been punished by father? Would I have been married off to a man as filthy as Shinhe? Enough, Li Nianfu. If you hadn't schemed against me time and again, would you have ended up like this? Li Nianfu froze for a moment, then laughed hysterically. What would you know? I'm just a concubine's daughter, crushed beneath you at every turn. Even the man I loved only ever loved you. And even my own mother had to bow her head to you. I shook my head. In both this life and the last, I had never mistreated them. I had always understood how difficult life was for women confined to the inner courtyard. That was why, in my past life, I had been deceived again and again by Li Nianfu, until I ended up destroyed body and soul. Clearly, I had been far too soft-hearted. Li Nianfu, stop pretending. It was you who colluded with mountain bandits and Shun He to kidnap me, and then had Shun He rescue me for appearances. Your downfall today is of your own making. Long ago, Shin Qingyan had investigated everything for me. What I had once thought was a chance rescue had in fact been meticulously planned, each step pulling me deeper into the abyss. I raised my hand and slapped Li Nianfu several times. She struggled, but her strength was no match for mine. During the months she had been married into the Shin family, I had secretly trained with a female martial arts master Shin Qingyan found for me, preparing for a day like this. Now it was finally paying off. Thankfully, Shin Qingyan had not been the kind of man who cared for old-fashioned proprieties. The master he found was one of the best. Now Li Nianfu couldn't fight back at all. At the most critical moment, Shin Qingyan kicked down the door. With one swift move, he sent Li Nianfu flying and pulled me into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered hoarsely. I came too late. Li Nianfu, using the last of her strength, tried to drive her knife into me again. But I twisted her hand, and she stabbed herself instead, right in the heart. Her eyes widened, filled with disbelief. A single tear slid down her cheek. Li Nianfu was dead. A heavy weight lifted from my chest. The stone that had burdened me for 2 lifetimes finally crumbled away. It was as if the wounds of my past life had been cleanly cut away. I had finally been reborn. Shin Qingyan hosted a grand wedding for me. After the previous ordeal, he remained deeply cautious, arranging trusted people all around me, sending constant updates to ease his worry. Seeing his jittery behavior, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Where was the cold, imposing general now? Our wedding night was pure bliss. By the candlelight, I thought I saw tears glistening in Shin Qingyan's eyes. I leaned closer to check, but he turned his head away. What's wrong? I teased. Could it be you're unhappy to have married me? He immediately shook his head. Qingwan, marrying you is the happiest moment of my life. As I leaned against his chest, feeling the fierce beating of his heart, warmth surrounded me. I almost cried. Then why the tears? He whispered into my hair. It just feels like a dream. Like I almost lost you. And it terrifies me. My heart ached for him. Though Shin Qingyan didn't know the events of my past life, his love for me was steadfast and unconditional. No matter what happened, he was always there, shielding me. When Li Nianfu had attacked, he had been the first to stand before me. To have such a man to love me, how could I not feel content? All the sorrows and betrayals of the past had been buried along with Li Nianfu and Shin He. From now on, I would walk hand in hand with Shin Qingyan, growing old together. And that was enough. End of story.